It's great to be here today. I just feel like I need to even just say this. Even though we're all at such different, maybe even ages and stages or seasons of life, we have different amounts of children living in or out of our home, maybe adult children that have moved back in. Maybe you're in a season where you have inherited the belongings of a loved one who's gone before you. Maybe the stuff that you're thinking, I see some nodding heads, that you're thinking is creating a little bit of the chaos in your life isn't even technically your responsibility at some level. And so I recognize there's a lot of distinctions for us here. And so that's where principles come into play. Principles over pragmatics. If you've known me very long, you'll know that that's true of our family. It's true of the way Jonathan and I talk about marriage or parenting or anything. Speaking of, very briefly, my husband, we've been married a little over 21 years. We have 5 kids that are, I still get to say teenagers. My oldest is getting married in June over here in the Valley. I went and looked at wedding stuff last night when I got into town a little bit early. So I could be a grandma soon, which is so incredible. But I have like a 14-year-old son and 16-year-old twin girls, Jane and Hazel, and then Charlotte is 18 and Audrey's 19. So over the years, and my husband Jonathan is a pastor. We've been in ministry together for the vast majority of our marriage. And we've also done something that I didn't do at all growing up, which is move. So I stayed in one spot, really stable dad, stable job. I didn't just say my husband's unstable. Don't make the connection. But we moved 12 times in our first 12 years of marriage. Remember, I never moved once before. And we had babies right off. So most of those 12 times were with 1, 2, 4, or 5 kids. There's twins, so I skipped a number. We had all these kids. We've lived in lots of kinds of circumstances. And some of what God has done in my life is taken what was already a little bit of a desire. So I grew up, you might have found me like cleaning my little sister's room for fun because she was such a little pack rat and it stressed me out. So I was like, best birthday present ever. I'd clean her room, I'd go under her bed and pull everything out and deal with it. And then I'd put gift wrap on her door and like a big red bow. I was like, you're welcome. I cleaned your room. So I was always organizing things and cleaning things growing up. I never got a proper summer job. I would clean out people's garages like in the church. When I'm like 12 and 13 years old, I'd be like, here's my little flyer. My sister babysits. I clean up stuff, and I'd give them their flyer and then they'd like let me in their house. What person's letting a 13-year-old shuffle through their stuff? And I'd clean their stuff and then I'd take their donations and I'd run a huge garage sale. And so I'd do that for 2 or 3 weekends. I'd make like $3,000. All my friends are scooping ice cream like schmucks, over like working 9 to 5 all summer. And I'm like, I had my garage sales. I'm going to go play soccer. So I've always kind of had a knack for this thing. And then God in his wisdom has made it so that the circumstances in my life both required me to develop better skills related to this and have given me lots of opportunities to serve him with those skills. Here's what I believe. We're each surrounded by so much stuff, and it takes so much of our time and our energy to manage all of our stuff. And because of that, I think there's meaning to what I do. I think if I had to say, my professional life is just moving people's stuff around, I wouldn't be able to go to bed at night feeling very satisfied with the work if the work of my life was just consumed with things. Personally, I just don't think that would be very deeply satisfying. But because I'm a Christian woman, and I know many of you here are today too, I think that God has made us in such a way that there's actually a lot of meaning to the mundane things that we put our hands to. And we think about them properly, and we think about them in that context. And because of that, I think that we're humans, and we're made in the image of God, and our God is actually a God of order and of beauty. He created in that way for that purpose. And I think if you know the story of Scripture well, which many of you do, you know what the problem is then, right? Disorder and chaos were not his original creational intent, but they are the result of sin impacting our world. What I'm not saying is that your really messy kitchen drawer is a sin. So again, like the theology has to be correct here, right? I'm literally not saying you're in sin for having a messy drawer. What I am saying though is that chaos and disorder and disarray are a direct result of the sin, and the disorder that's the biggest problem is the stuff that's internal, but it expresses itself externally. And when our priorities get a little bit jacked, it immediately shows up externally because we're finite. We don't have the ability to fix and manage all the things while fixing and managing our own internal life at times. And so there's a skill set that comes alongside to help. And I love helping my clients do much more important work than just manage their stuff, but help them see the connection between the disorder and the disarray and the chaos that is wreaking havoc on their life and the life of those they're trying to serve, as well as what's going on internally that kind of gets them there. Okay. I could talk for a really long time. You just met me. It's only been a few minutes. Chandra said I only have a few minutes, not like 2 weekends worth of stuff. So we're gonna move a little bit quickly because what I wanna do is I want to both give you a vision for the beauty of what I'm gonna call garden stewardship. So, oh, look, it worked. Okay, a vision for garden stewardship is kind of the way that I would title this thinking as a woman who's a Christian woman living in a world that I believe God has ordained to be a certain way. And if I say garden, I hope you know what I mean. If you're not a believer, if you're not yet a follower or disciple of Jesus, one, I really hope you become one. It'll be the best thing you ever put your mind and heart to. I like to talk about 3 things a lot. The primary thing I love to talk about is Jesus and his work and his word. The second thing I love to talk about is education. I've home educated. That's how I met Chandra. That's a whole nother story. Never thought I would want to do that. Thought that was a pretty bad idea and thought I could talk my husband out of it. But I wanted to have his babies, like a couple babies for him because I loved him. And he's like, will you even read a book? So I'm like, I'll read your book, and then I'll have your babies, and I'll send them to school, and it'll be great. And some stuff changed for me, and it's lit me up inside, and I love talking about education and parenting as it goes along with that. And the third thing is what we're going to talk about today, which is organizing. It's the thing that makes my heart beat a little bit faster with excitement, because I know I can help in some ways for people. So the process of home organization has shown me what's true about a lot of life, and that's that as beautiful and wonderful and good as things are, they tend toward disorganization and disarray. If they're not tended to, all things go that way. Haven't you noticed that? And it's true in our own lives. Like an untended soul, habits that are not attended to will always tend toward disarray and disorganization, coming apart. And I think God has built these beautiful principles into our life, like asking us to Sabbath, asking us to tend to our souls, to take rest before him. He's built these principles in our life to help order us and order our affections accordingly. And I think it's a beautiful thing. Now, before we start, we're about to start, but before we start, I really want to make one thing clear. There's just no time, and I want you to waste no time ever thinking about the shame or the embarrassment of the messes in your life. They really are just messes. They really are just things. And when clients invite me into their house, there is just terror behind their eyes. I mean, almost every time. There's so much embarrassment about what we've hidden away because we don't want anyone to see it. And I think this is one of the invitations of the Christian life, is to actually be all the way who we are in front of a God who receives us, but then doesn't leave us that way. But he receives us with the same amount of love that he would have for us if our life was perfectly ordered. His love for us doesn't change based on how good we're behaving or how good we're appearing. And so I really want to extend that grace to you today, that as we talk about these things, and I'm going to show you pictures, I don't want you thinking, my house looks even worse than that. I must be fill in the blank. What you are is a beloved daughter of the King, and maybe you've lacked some skills in some areas. Guess what? They're just skills. You can learn them. You can learn them. So you need to just avoid shame and get excited with me, because there's nothing that makes me more excited than a really good mess. Nobody believes me. They're like, you don't want to see this room. And I'm like, do I need to show you the pictures? This room is probably like a 6 out of 10 of the messes I've helped with. Just don't worry about it. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about principles. And here's why. Principles over pragmatics. Whether we're talking about parenting, marriage, education, your devotional life, your spiritual disciplines, whatever the things are, I believe that principles trump pragmatics every time. Knowing why you do something is infinitely more important than the exact detail of how you do the thing. Because if you have the why, if the principle becomes innate and owned and loved, and if your affections are shaped by it, and if you deeply understand a why, you'll figure out the how. You'll find the help you need, you'll get the tools or the tricks or the techniques, but if all you have is tools, tricks, and techniques, and you don't understand the why, it's flipped on its head. Not only are the results impacted, but your own soul doesn't experience that reordering that I'm talking about. And so we want to think about the why. That makes some people mad. They just want like tricks. I'm like, sorry, I got a few, but mostly what I have for you is why. And I feel like if you get inspired by the why, you'll probably do better things than I've even done. So we're going to start. I've distilled it into 7 principles. There's probably a lot more, but these are where we're going to start. The first one is my overarching vision statement, kind of like I talked about already. I can't really read it, but I think it says something to the effect of, we're invited by Christ to joyfully join him in the work of restoring beauty and order from the chaos and the mess. And this is what I believe. This is like, you know, when Paul sometimes writes and he's like, now this is me talking, you know, in the New Testament, like, these are the words of God. Now I want to say just one quick thing. This is me. I'm going to say one quick thing. I don't know that this is the word of the Lord, you know, in a prophetic statement, but I will say this. Work is sacred and holy when it's done unto the Lord. And that includes the work of vacuuming out crumbs of a pantry kitchen drawer and getting underneath a bed and scooping out the remains of, we don't want to talk about, but all the remains. That work, it doesn't feel holy and it doesn't feel sacred, and it absolutely is when that work is done unto the Lord and it's done with a desire to be whole and full of integrity before him, not to perform for someone else or to shame or whatnot. So with that in mind, 7 principles. The first one is this: our stuff is simply stuff, and it should serve us and others and not master us. Particularly if you're a Christian woman here, the invitation is for you to live in freedom in every area of your life. Christ came to set you free in every area of your life in which there is bondage to something that sin has destroyed. Every area. And if you spend a lot of time like me in a home, like cooking for hordes of teenagers and all of the people that come with them and managing chore charts and all these things, there are stuff in our house is meant to serve. It's meant to serve those teenagers. It's meant to serve those who join us at table that aren't of my family. And whenever our stuff starts to master us, the frank truth is this, friends. And I mean, you can raise your hand if you think this is not you. I won't make you raise your hand if you think it is you, but most of us have too much stuff. I know that sounds so simple, but it's just true. And the problem is there must be something going on there, and I meet it in the face of my clients all the time. There's a lot of reasons that people have too much stuff, and very few of them, if we lay them out in the light of day, are ones that are aligned with truth. And so our stuff really is meant to serve us and serve the people around us. And at the point in which it becomes our master, we have to spend so much time thinking about it, managing it, dealing with it, making plans for it. The question has to just become, why? Why do I have so much stuff? What do I think it's bringing and adding to my life? What am I afraid of if I let go of this stuff? Like, what do I think is going to happen? Is my stuff providing security? Do I have maybe a little issue with greed or consumption or consumerism? Is there a little thing that's gone on in my heart and I've let it sit there a little too long? And so I keep buying and acquiring and buying and acquiring with no focus and no need for that stuff in my life. That question has to get asked so it doesn't hamper our ability to serve others, to let our life be a life of service. If I'm always managing my stuff, my hands are too busy to help others. And we don't want that, right? So principle number 1, let's be masters of our stuff and let it be tools and never let it master us. Principle number 2, peaceful spaces invite peace. This does not say, again, be very careful with the words. It does not say peaceful spaces create peace. They don't. Non-anxious people who carry the peace of Christ with them into a space can create space, a peaceful space in the midst of a war-torn, chaotic scenario, right? Literally. You can walk in with the peaceful presence of the Holy Spirit in you into a war-torn situation and bring about peace. So I'm not saying that we manage all of our stuff and we get it in such a way that we guarantee peace for everyone around us and peace for ourselves. Peace is not the idol. Peace is not the goal. Peace is the fruit of the Spirit that's worked in us, and it works itself out in our spaces. But when we set up our spaces in a way that the visual clutter is minimized, I think most people don't understand how much your space affects you. We just get used to living with so much visual clutter and so much distraction that we don't actually know that it's like kind of this weight on us, this low-level anxiety that you live with all the time, because you always see the pile of things you haven't dealt with and the pile of this over here and the pile of this, and you open that cabinet and it's like, oh, close it. Like, it's always creating low-level anxiety that you learn to manage. You can go about your life generally, but when you actually deal with the messes all the way down to the dregs, you create peaceful spaces, and they invite and create more possibility for others to experience peace in your space as well. And I think it's a great gift to have non-anxious spaces for people to be in. I just think it's a way we can serve each other. It's not to perform. If Chandra comes into my house, I don't actually want her really thinking about my house. Like, oh, it's so clean. Oh, it's so this. And it breaks my heart when people don't invite people over. They don't show hospitality because they feel like their space can't do it. It makes me so sad. It really, truly does. But when someone comes into my house, I actually don't want them thinking about my house. Remember, the stuff is to serve people. So what I want them to experience is just a sense of like freedom and calm. Like they're not overwhelmed. They don't come in and they're immediately overwhelmed. I mean, I'm overwhelming, so they're immediately overwhelmed by me, probably, but not by my stuff, you know? I'm gonna show you some pictures now. I don't know if you can even see these, maybe they're bigger. This is a client I worked with years ago, and this is just a simple example of how you set up a space in such a way that it kind of constantly has a sense of visual clutter, and a few quick changes that you can make with your own stuff that you already have to minimize that. So this client, I know, you can see that little shelf in the front that's kind of turned sideways. What they were trying to do, and a lot of people do this, they were trying to hide that, all those office supplies and kids stuff, that was like all their little papers and all their things. They were trying to hide it from the living room, which was right behind it. Problem was, it's not really well hidden because you see it entirely from the kitchen all day, every day, and every time you walk down to that hallway. But they were trying to create a little barrier like, well, let's just not look at some of the stuff, you know? So they'd kind of turned it sideways and oriented their furniture such a way. But with just a few small shifts, I flattened that same shelf against the wall and then put just a couple little ledges above so we could highlight some of their favorite picture books. This is kind of common. It's not like super magical. Like, I'm not an interior designer in ways that I know many people are very skilled at. But what I do see is how can I minimize visual clutter so that when people are in this space, everything they need, nothing left that room. Everything is still in that space, but it's not like attacking you as you walk in. It's not just like leaping out at you, and you're not looking at it feeling bad all the time. The next picture shows that same view from the other side of the living room. Their shelves were all open, and you'll notice what I did was simply put cabinetry on the lower, I put doors, basically. I put doors on the lower half just to let your brain calm down. You don't have to see all the things. I can see half of them. And guess what? Make the half you see the most beautiful half. Just put the most beautiful stuff up front and the rest. Now, the other thing, so that's what that room looks like with just some doors on it and a slightly change of color of some bins. When you open those doors, do you think I just shoved it all behind it? I sure didn't. When you open the doors, Even when you open it, you're not overwhelmed. You're not like, and now I have to dig for a pen that works. You know, you open it and immediately I can see every office supply, everything's labeled. Of course, it's far away, you can't see it, but you get the picture. Similarly, how does this space make you feel? I have permission from Marina to show this picture. All of my clients have become dear friends now. I have lots of wonderful dear friends who I've dug out of their messes together, and they don't mind if I share their pictures. I never share without permission. Marina's room had become the catch-all for, this is her office. This is her office. And this woman actually worked as a professional administrative assistant to another woman. She's a fantastically hardworking, fantastically lovely mom, okay? So this doesn't mean Marina's bad at anything. Well, she's bad at this, but she's not bad in any way that matters, if that makes sense to you, okay? I adore her. She has a great heart. She's skillful. She's a good mom, all the things. And her room was just trash. I'm like, friend, she goes, I know. And she just shoves it over. I go, no, we have to leave it open. That's why I'm here. So you open it, and just dealing with that has changed her life. I mean, you ask her about it today, she will tell you, dealing with this stuff, it literally has changed how she's able to mother, engage professionally, all the different things. Couple days and coat of paint. It's all the same furniture. The furniture was buried in the room. It didn't get highlighted. The problem often with our chaos and our lack of peace is that it's also burying most of the good stuff we have. So you start out with all this stuff, and it all seems good, which is why you keep buying it. And then you get it home, and you don't ever frame the prints. Her friend had made those watercolor prints for her. They have scriptures on it. They're totally beautiful. Buried, I found them and almost could have recycled them accidentally. Everything, when a space is peaceful, it invites peace. There's even a little coloring corner for her little kids that you can't see in this picture, so they can now join their mom in a non-chaotic space and relate. That's a gift. They couldn't join their mom in a non-chaotic space in the previous picture. That's just the inside of that cupboard before, and that's the inside of that cupboard now. Every drawer has a purpose. We'll talk about it later a little bit. This is a hard picture to see, but the entryway space, when I think of inviting someone into my house, I generally think of the entryway. What's the first thing someone experiences when they walk into your house? And it's the entryway. Unfortunately, that often becomes the drop zone, because where do you put your shoes? Where do you put your bags? Where do you put the return that you have to take back? It's a common functional problem in a lot of houses, is what to do for the drop zone. But by reorienting this space just a little bit and creating again, it's really hard to see these pictures from far away, but there's a long, proper piece of furniture on that wall now with a good sizable, proper sized basket with each kid's name on it for their shoes and their purse and their water bottle and their things, the things they need to remember to take to someone's house, etc. And we'll talk later in a minute, but there also needs to be a home for things that have no home. That sounds a little redundant, but you know what I'm talking about. You have to take that return to Amazon. You have to give that thing to so-and-so who left it at your house. So-and-so left their binky, and it's a special one. And so you're holding on to this binky or this blankie that does not even belong to your children for weeks until you see that person. There needs to be a place for that that's not like my corner of my kitchen counter or the top of my armoire, right? So a basket of things for others is part of a functional system, and it's a great help. Okay, number 3, insides are as important as outsides, therefore they should match. Now, what does that even mean? What that means for me is this. Again, I'm going to hearken back to the deeper reality. As someone who's been saved by the grace of Jesus and his Spirit is now in me and working out in my life the practical implications, like the fruit of his Spirit in my life, as someone who wants to identify as a Jesus follower, what that means is I do not want to put on a show for people. I do not want to show up and try to make you think that I'm something that I'm not. I don't want to show up trying to make you think that I'm this or that or this wonderful or this whatever. I don't want you to think that I'm joyful or that I'm happy. What I want you to see is the actual fruit of the real work that God's done in my life or others' lives. And his joy as it spills forth gets called that. It's the joy of Christ. His peace, his love, all those things. And so we want to be people of integrity. And another word for integrity is wholeness. It's without crack. It's what you see is what you get. This is not false. This is not pretense. This is not performance. This is not a mask. It's real. And it's a beautiful way to live with one another as women. It's a beautiful way. And I challenge you, if you're not living with that kind of integrity, which includes vulnerability and honesty, if you're living in a way where you're trying to prop up your performance externally, but internally it's a mess, confess your mess, get friends that will pray for you, and let God do work in you so that you can live with full integrity. But what it means when it comes to organizing, I think it matters too. It's that we spend a lot of energy hiding our messes. We do this in our real life, and we do this in our homes. We take a lot of energy to tuck away everything that is unsightly. We do it with our own sin. So instead of letting our sin get out in the open air and just being like, I'm awful. This is what I did. I need the grace of God so desperately. And just telling the truth about our sin to our girlfriend so she can pray for us and we can receive forgiveness and move out of our slavery to that particular sin and move on to fixing the next one, because there's always another one, right? But dealing with our messes, when we hide our messes and we spend energy hiding our messes, we're not free to live. We're not free to live in the way that truly bears witness to Christ's work in our life. And so I say insides are as important as outsides, which means this: when I organize for someone, we are not just throwing all their stuff we don't want to look at in a place where we don't have to look at it. We're dealing with it. We're bringing it out and dealing with it. Sometimes the garage is the example of that place. You know it's the room where you're like, well, I can close that door. I'm not entertaining my in-laws in the garage, so it's fine. And in some sense, of course, you're right. I'm not saying you need to carpet your garage and hang art on the wall, though that's what I've done with mine. But that's because we have, I actually, as soon as I said that, I was like, I'm about to make a joke that's not real. Like, I actually did that. But that's because our house was really small and we have a lot of really big people living in it. And so I needed the garage space to become a full-blown living space. So we may or may not have lost our garage, but you don't have to. A garage can still be a functional place for storage, but this idea that you just toss things in and then shove the door. Did you guys ever read Berenstain Bear books growing up? Right? Okay, so we had those. My kids we just never read them. I don't know why. But I still remember from my childhood my very favorite Berenstain Bear book, and it was the one where they clean their room. Shocker. They clean their room, and I literally remember the picture. You got Mama Bear with a blue and white polka dot dress that she's always wearing. God bless that minimal woman. She owns one outfit. That is smart. It's probably how they live in that treehouse, and they do it just fine. This is all coming to me right now. I never have said this out loud, and I don't know where it's coming from. But I just got this image of Berenstain Bears, and I remember that book because, Mama opens the closet. It's like midway through the book. You remember, she opens the closet, and everything's falling on her. There's like toy dinosaurs, and everything's like hitting the mom because she opens a closet because the kids have been cleaning their room. I have 5 kids, ages 14 to 19. I have taught a lot of people what it means to clean rooms. I understand what your kids think is cleaning their room. Some of it's their fault and some of it's not. Some of it is that there's not a true system for them to know when it's clean. They don't know where things are really supposed to go. So shifting their mess feels like cleaning. Is shifting a mess cleaning? It's not. It's shifting a mess. So when that boxes fall on Mama, and then you get to the end of the book, and you remember you open the last page, and it's just a little closet and has all these brown boxes with like a black Sharpie, and it says like dinosaurs. It just made my little kid heart so happy. I was like, look at that closet. My goal for my clients is actually this, that they would be able to open any drawer, any closet, and I mean any. Like, we don't just leave a little corner of our heart where we're like, Jesus, you get everything else but that one. I'm, of course, over-spiritualizing, organizing, and cleaning hugely here. But when I look at projects for people, our goal is to get all the way down to the end. It's not to leave anything untouched. Eventually, this is a process, but eventually, to deal with it all so that anytime you open something, you actually can go to your closet to deep breathe and go, it's so pretty. That's how I feel about my pantry. I literally go in there. I'm like, it's so pretty. Oh, thank you, Jesus, for this room. Because you know what? The rest of my life is unfinished projects. Why? Because people are unfinished projects. I am an unfinished project. There's no fully fixing the problem of sin and what it's done in the world here in this side of heaven. Not fully. But I want to have all my energy to be able to engage with the actual relational weight of the humans around me. That's far more important than my junk. And when you have the things you can handle dealt with, Again, don't use this as some sort of idol, like I'm avoiding the people in my life because I'm cleaning my pantry. That can happen. But if our pantry is ordered, it does free us up to love the people around us with far more focus and energy and intention, to minister with more freedom. I don't know why I got on that. Oh, because I want you to open your garage and be happy. That's what I want. I want you to see that. Like, I want you to open your garage and go, okay, all my junk is still there. It still has to have a place to live. I'm not telling people you have to get rid of everything you own. It's impractical and realistic, and it doesn't happen. But I do want you to look at your garage and feel like that. That picture feels different, right? I don't feel as overwhelmed. I know that when summer comes and I need that summer bin, everything's in there. Keep going. This is a bad example. I might even skip it, but it's just the idea that you open a cabinet in your kitchen, and this is a huge floor-to-ceiling cabinet. I don't know if you can catch the scope of it from this picture, but like 2.5 of those shelves were just spices, and then it was tons of medicines. If you were looking for cardamom, you're going to need to give yourself a minute. Like, you're going to need to make a plan and go, I have this long to cook, and I need 17 minutes to find the cardamom. And so when you don't have functional organization inside of cupboards, it's fine that nobody sees it, but it's actually not fine for you in your real life because you want to be able to function well. And so just simply taking a cupboard like that, it's not that much prettier, but by putting everything on spinners that are labeled, so I know dad's medicines are over here, cold and cough is right here, pain and digestion is right here. Everything's got a little simple label. It immediately makes the tasks that you have to do frequently less anxiety producing. You just don't have to see anxiousness every time you know you gotta find. Nobody finds cardamom that often, but that's okay. Number 4, form and function don't have to fight. I love this one a lot because sometimes people go, you know what, it just works. And I'm like, that's fine. And I actually won't even fight with you about it. If you like what you're doing, do what you're doing. People that like what they're doing don't hire me though. So they have hired me to tell them that it's okay. Form and function don't have to fight. What do I mean by form? I mean a space can be both beautiful and deeply functional at the same time. They don't have to fight with one another. And I think the best organized spaces are, and here's why. 9 times out of 10, that's a made up statistic, by the way, just made it up. 9 times out of 10, I've never polled anyone. 9 times out of 10, when a space is really beautiful, everybody keeps the space more beautiful. When a space is just like whatever, nobody feels bad sticking the jar of peanut butter in the wrong spot in a whatever cabinet, But when it's a beautiful space and it's clear, when the form is there, it brings such pleasure to even small kids that they kind of want to help keep it nice. No, that's a little bit of a high hoping thing. None of you have a 2-year-old that's like dreaming of keeping your kitchen cabinets nice. They are unloading said kitchen cabinets, but that's another day. That's function. We plan for proper function, for the real life that you really live, whatever age or stage. You organize for the real life you live, not some imaginary magazine life of someone who doesn't have children or doesn't have medically fragile adults living in their house. We organize our space for the real people that we're trying to serve, but it is possible to do it beautifully as well. Form and function don't have to fight. Jonathan and I had there might be pictures. Sure. Jonathan and I had a quote on our fridge like years ago when we first got married. And I think it was like with our little budget, it was like trying to keep us accountable. And it said something like, I should remember the quote, but it was basically something like, have nothing in your home that you do not believe to be useful or beautiful. It was something to that effect. It was just a good one-liner to help us go, okay, is this thing that's in my house useful? Like, do we need it? And if so, great, figure out a place for it. Or is it really, truly beautiful? We have this painting of my great uncle's that hangs. That's like really wonderful. I love it. It's totally unuseful. God is frivolous and wonderful. He made tons of beautiful, not necessary things in the world, and it is okay to deck yourself out and your home out with frivolous beauty because it images God. He made flowers. We don't need we need trees and we need oxygen. We could go off on the biology of the situation, but we don't need so much of what God did. He made it beautiful because it images him. This is one of those like cabinets that's kind of fabulously functional in that it pulls out, If you don't have one, no 10th commandment, 9th commandment, what's the envy commandment? No envying your neighbor's nothing, their horse, their donkey, their wife, their nothing, including their kitchen pantry cabinets. You guys, I have to pray before I go to every single job. Lord, grant me that I would maintain the contentment I am sitting with right now before I walk into a house where this person who has more resources than I do, a bigger space and less children, and in my mind, I think I could do so much better. If I only had an extra 1,000 square feet, and I have to pray against envy. Because I go into people's homes all the time who have all the things I think would make me happier. This people have those kinds of cabinets. I really like the cabinets that pull out. They're so functional. You can see everything. You're not digging deep for things. But you can see it's actually not that functional. They have their stuff so piled on every shelf that I guarantee you, if we were playing supermarket sweep and you were trying to find the most expensive thing to put in your cart, you wouldn't be able to find it. You would at my house. I know right where those saffron sticks are. You know, those things are like $100 for 2 of them. In this cabinet, it's not functional and the form's not really there. But with just a little bit of love, you can unify your space by simply like putting every spice in the matching jar and then refilling it for, by the way, much cheaper at Winco or other places. It's much cheaper to refill pantry jars than it is to buy new things all the time in bulk. It's much cheaper. At any rate, you can see form and function do not have to fight. This is an infinitely more functional pantry. They can open up and find exactly what they want, know exactly how much they have at any time without worry. Same with this. It's a little bit of the same. Well, that's a really lovely pantry. And that was her spices. It's kind of on the corner inside. You can't see it. She was a major home cook. Oh, she cooks fabulous food. This lady's name is Sharon. She's Australian. And she had so many spices, that wasn't even all of them, but it was working okay. She knew where all her spices were. But we made it a lot more beautiful simply by making larger shelves so everything could live in one place. That is a key organizational thing. If you can get every item that belongs in that category in that one place, rather than spreading them out in multiple places, you'll save yourself a lot of mental energy. Okay, number 5, everything has a place and everything in its place. This is, if I had to pick, notice these 7 are not in like a particular order. I do think the idea of slavery to our stuff versus our stuff serving us is a foundational principle. I think it just is true, and I think God intends for us to live in greater freedom, and so I think it maybe belongs in number 1, but I don't know if they're really ordered properly. This one is near and dear to my heart. Everything has a place, and everything goes in its place. Friends, if you master this one principle, like if you take this in and you think about it all the time when you're dealing with all the category of things in your life, it will radically change your day-to-day life. And it's the number one thing my clients come back and go, 3 years later, I cannot believe we've kept these systems. And actually secretly I go, neither can I, because I know you in real life, and I know the way your chaotic, sweet, wonderful brain works, and I know your kids. I've met them. They're the wild animals Jenna talked about earlier. Like, I know it. Like, I know kids. They're wild. I can't believe you've maintained it for 3 years. It's not true. I can believe it because my life's work is to help create systems that are actually functionally able to maintain over time. That's what a good system does. And the key to that kind of a system, no matter what kind of stuff you're organizing, is that everything has a place it lives, and then everything gets put in its place. Now, that second one is the real tricky one, right? We might have a place we intend for something, and in our head, we know where it goes, but we're just too tired, like at the end of a thing, and we unload our purse or our whatever, and here's this weird chapstick, and here's this gift card that someone graciously gave me as a thank you, and here's this pair of scissors. I don't know why scissors are in my purse. They're always in my purse. Here's all this weird stuff, and it's the end of the day, and I just don't care. And so there's a little pile of things that really belong in other places of the house, but I haven't put them there. Friends, if you take like the 10-minute audit at the end of the day to just return things to their homes, it is life-changing. Then every time someone wants scissors, nobody has to ask you about it anymore, because the scissors are always in the bucket that says scissors. When I look at my kids like, I know you're smart, and I know you're not asking me this question right now. There's a label on everything in our house. My son, back in the day, okay, here's the thing with label makers. I have like a lot of them because it's my job. It is the one area in which I might be a little overboard. But I got all the different kinds for different clients and different types of spaces. And I would bring them to church. I met a couple gals here from the church we served at for 15 years in Portland. It was fun to see you guys. But I remember in the kids ministry, I left my labeler in there because I had been labeling all the crafts or something. And it unfortunately keeps a record of what's typed before in there. And someone had really jammed up all the tape, and it was all these printed names. Kids like their own name. They're so important. Jonathan, typing their name. And so I'm like, oh, guys, I really need you to keep your hands off Miss Jamie's label maker. Only because this tape is like $27 a roll. And I love you, and you're not Jesus, and I'm not anointing your feet with $27 oil. Like, we're just not doing that, And they're like, oh, I didn't touch it. I'm like, your name is literally right here. You typed your name, If you're going to be a criminal, be a smarter one. But my little son at one point was walking around with this label on his forehead that said Jude 4. Like with his age. I have a really full life, and let's be honest, I have forgotten where my kids were sometimes, or things go wrong, but I don't need a label on you, buddy. Like, I know your name and I know your age, so I know that much. Everything has a place and everything in its place. If you don't have a place for something, if something comes into your home and you don't know where it should live, there are a few good questions to ask. One is, would God want me to have something in my life that I can't steward well? There are things I would really like to own that our life and space doesn't allow for. And I go, thank you, God, for that God-given constraint. You've given me the constraint of this amount of space, and I already have this many teenagers living in it. Therefore, I don't get to own X. It's okay. I'm now free from wondering how I can squish that into my life. But when things come into your house, if they don't have a space to live, you need to ask yourself, if it's something that needs to live in your home, you need to figure out a system so it knows where it goes, so it doesn't overwhelm you and take over your life. And if you don't, you need to ask yourself, then maybe I don't need to own it. Is there someone I could pass this on to who can steward it well? There's a lot of people who can steward things well that you or I can't. That's totally fine. We don't need to judge how much stuff each other keeps, right? Maybe you have a friend that's really crafty. Let her keep all the extra craft stuff and borrow it when you need it, If she's doing well managing her craft thing, give her all your extra stuff if she wants it. If she's like me, people stopped asking me to take their stuff a long time ago. Jamie, do you want? No, she's going to say no to me. Jamie's going to say no if I offer this to her. The thing is this, the one-touch rule. When something enters your space, try to deal with it right away. You know where the scissors go. If it's just a matter of 10 extra steps to that drawer, just go, oh, no, right now, stop. There's no reason I can't take 10 steps. Walk back, pick up the scissors, and go put them back where they go. If you get in those kind of habits are essential. Even with great organizational systems, they have to be kept up. Even once we've oriented our life around Jesus and his priorities and his principles, the things that he loves, and we're serving in those capacities, we have to maintain the state of our souls through constant prayer with the Father, engagement with the spiritual disciplines, time in the Word of God. That stuff doesn't maintain itself. Relationships don't maintain themselves. You don't marry your husband and never go on a date with him ever again. You maintain every good thing in your life, and that's true of every system. Just because you organized it once, you do have to maintain it, which brings me to the next category. Oopsies. This is my hall closet. This is the only closet in my tiny little house that we bought in Central Oregon. We bought 4 acres, so we have some goats and chickens and things. We have a very small, it's not very small, but it's under 1,500 square feet, and we do a lot of life in that together. This is my one hall closet, and anyone who comes to my house who asks for something, there is one of those labeled Band-Aids, there's one of those labeled everything. Go find it, you'll find it. It's like the Berenstain Bear closet. I got my very own eventually. This is all the sheets and king, queen, twin. The bedding is on the bottom. You've got all the hair dryers. It says styling and dry. We have 4 daughters. We also have 1 shower. So not that I deserve applause for that, but maybe sort of, because it's a lot of work to get 7 people to live in harmony and unity and self-sacrifice with each other and no one ever be mad about the cold water situation and the amount of time spent in a very small bathroom. But we do it, and we do it actually pretty well because of good systems and a lot of practice. This is the idea. Every drawer, just the simplicity, those are dollar store drawer organizers. The problem is, and we'll get to this if we have time, which we probably won't because I talk too much. The problem is when you organize a drawer, Like some of you are like 75% of the way there, I imagine, all the time. Like you dump out the drawer and you're like, I'm gonna do the drawer. And then you kind of reorganize it and you shuffle and you get rid of the gum wrappers and you get rid of the true trash and you find homes for that. But you're still left with the random, like the stuff that still needs to be dealt with. When you don't fill out a drawer all the way, with properly fitting like dividers, whenever you leave little spots where, you know what I'm talking about. I love that you know what I'm talking about because it's true. Whenever you leave those little spots and then everything shifts around and stuff falls out, and whenever you don't actually label or make the categories incredibly clear, that drawer, unfortunately, will go the way of all messes probably within 2 to 3 weeks. And you go, what's the point? Why do I bother? No one keeps it up. And it's like partly other people's problems. They do need to train to put the rubber bands back in the rubber band spot. But at the same time, when the whole drawer, like you can see these drawers, when the containers fit the entire space really well, there's nowhere to shove weird stuff. It's true of every closet. If you have the right fitting organizational material, it's so much easier to keep it nice. If you have ill-fitting stuff where the things don't actually fit in them, good luck keeping your system. Or if you have empty spaces or empty tops of dressers, they will gather things. So when things don't have a home, it makes sense that they just end up in the little holes in between. Now, maybe, we'll see. That was a shelf a long time ago. It's just everything has a spot. When you're organizing that top of that shelf, this is an awkward angle of this picture. It's because I'm standing on like a 3-stair up. But the things on the top there are actually like memory storage boxes for each of those kids for all of like their past schoolwork and projects and, you know, sweet mementos from the science fair or the this or that or the other thing. So they have names on them and they're up high because it makes a lot of sense that the stuff you're not going to access with regularity goes up high. That's a principle that is pretty logical. Most of us understand it. But lightweight things like papers and such go all the way to the ceiling of whatever. If you live in a small house especially, but even if you don't, utilizing the fullness of your space is really helpful in finding a home for everything. Because everything can't live at counter level. Like you got to get creative. Unless you're going to be a true minimalist, which more power to you. You probably don't need my help if you're already there. This is, baskets of painting supplies. This family did a ton of painting. This girl's a fine art major in college now. They had just paint stuff everywhere. So we developed a rolling cart. So this was like a really kind of a pretty cart, and it has like clear spinners on it. So all her stuff can spin. She can still get it. It's actually still full of a ton. It's all the same stuff from the previous picture, but it's organized in such a way that not only is it not totally unsightly, but it can be moved easily from room to room, which is why she had the baskets. She's like, I can't leave it in a closet because I need to do it over here. So we made a cart. She could move it around and still use it. This is like a craft and notions room, same kind of thing. Even in the rooms where you have so much, raise your hand if you're a crafter. Oh, come on, that's it? Okay, maybe it's going out of fashion, I don't know. My mom had a room attached to our garage that looked like Michaels and Joann Fabrics had like gotten married and then had a really messy divorce and had exploded their stuff everywhere. That was my mom's room. It was epic if you were a kid and you wanted to do a fun project. She literally had everything. Everything. You know, some people do things in reaction to the parents that they grew up with. My mom is the best human being I know. I love her dearly. I spent all night last night and morning with her. And she has let me fix her craft room in the last 2 decades. And she lives with all her fabric folded on these cards now. And she gets so proud. She sends me pictures. Oh, look at my fabric, you know. So when everything has a place, you actually can do the creative things you dream about doing. When your craft room is just piles upon piles of unused things, how much creating do you actually get done? It's way less than you hope for most people. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving fast because, this is like a bathroom closet. Oh, I know why this picture's here. When I say everything has a place and everything in its place, sometimes what people do is they go and they buy baskets like that. Like this gal, she bought these 4 baskets. This was like a virtual organizing consult. So I worked with her remotely and just told her what to go buy, told her what to do. She sent me the measurements. I planned her little space. And she just wanted to fix this cabinet in her bathroom. But what happens is she has too big of baskets for a lot of small things. You guys know what I'm talking about? So you went out and you bought the baskets and you were like, I did it, Jamie. I'm organizing things. But your baskets are so big that if you look in that basket, which I don't know if you can see, I mean, it's moderately helpful. It's helpful that it's not like on the shelf falling. I'll give you that. It's not falling out. But you can't find what you need in that basket. It's too big of a category for most bathroom supplies. So what we did is we split up that same shelf into much smaller categories. I'm going to be honest, I don't actually love the way this looks, but for what they need, because I prefer to not actually see every single thing. That still is like, I don't like it as much. But we used clear bins for her because she actually really wanted to see all the things. So each of those bins now is categorically very streamlined and much smaller. When you have the small right-sized bin for the kind of thing you're trying to sort in it, like dental care versus eye care versus feminine products, when things are split in smaller categories, they're much easier for everyone to put back in the proper spot and to find what they need. So that was just an example of that. This is an example of like a family room where you have to have a lot going on and you don't have any closed cabinetry. We created this like wall shelving situation. So the kids there's like chairs that you can't quite see there with desks and lots of space to store everything and use the space and have beautiful things hanging. But the room is still very open and functional for play and things like that. Okay, number 6, there's only 7, so we're almost done. Habits and lifestyle over projects and quick fixes. Here's the thing, we all want it. It's the reason the advertising market is the way it is. It's the reason you and I have both bought an eye cream that someone did some funny little video where they promised after 2 wipes, someone looked like they weren't 87 anymore. And you're like, you know in your heart, it's not probably true. And you bought it anyway. I feel like I've arrived. I bought an eye cream off of Instagram. My kids are making so much fun of me. I'm like, I never had an eye cream. I feel like it's time, Anyway, did I bump it? Oopsie poopsie, sorry. Habits and lifestyle over quick fixes. This is a principle that I think is true of God and how he's at work in the world. We have a long view of our salvation. We have a long view of our relationships. We do not expect that I repent once and quickly and everything in life is restored. We do not expect that we do one organizational project and my life should be changed and I should never have to attend to it again. Habits are the foundation of all of your life. And you already have them. You have lots of them. The key is being able to discern what habits am I living out of that are serving me well, and what habits do I have that are not, and picking 1 or 2 at a time and starting very small to address them over quick fixes. A simple habit, like every time when you come in, dealing with your purse, can change your life. A simple habit of putting your shoes where they go and having your kids stop everything they're doing to deal with their shoes. It's like a simple thing that changes, and you can continue to add habits over time. And the last one, thanks, you guys flipped back. You're so skilled. I love it. The next one is one I love too, and it's this. It's never too late to start again. I don't know about you, but all of us, and everyone I know, myself included, have experienced discouragement. We have good intentions. We start down a path with a lot of high hopes. And we just feel like we messed it up. And here we are, back where we started. Why can't I get my act together? Why am I still fill in the blank? Years later, I've been trying to deal with this thing in my life or whatnot. And that discouragement, I'm going to encourage you, is never the voice of your Heavenly Father. He just doesn't speak to us in shame and condemnation. He always invites us into greater pursuits of holiness and righteousness. He convicts us of sin, for sure, but he doesn't speak with us about our worthlessness or our inability to do what we say or, look at you again. He just doesn't talk to us that way. And in the same way that we hopefully don't talk to our children that way when we want to breathe life into them. So talk to yourself the right way about these areas of your life. Talk to yourself the way you would be trying to encourage your best friend. If she wanted to do better and she wanted to grow in an area, you wouldn't be like, yeah, right, I know you've said that before, you never do it. You wouldn't speak to your friend that way. you would go, how can I help you? How can I encourage you? What's one thing we can do today to move closer to that goal? You would speak life over her. It's never too late. Grace and mercy are new every morning. And stewardship is a very real responsibility of every Christian. Like it just is. Stewardship is a real responsibility. It's a practical implication of all of our lives. We've all been given something by God to manage. Physical things, spiritual things, all of it together. One is not, I would argue, more important than the other. I don't believe in that heresy where the spiritual is somehow greater than the physical. I believe Christ took on a body and he came and lived our life so that we could be embodied Christians who in our physical world represent truer realities together. Again, please don't hear me say that your drawer is a sin or anything to that matter, but let me encourage you that dealing with it is important spiritual work. It's important work. It's important to give your attention and your thoughts and your heart toward ordering your life internally and externally, and it's okay to give time for that. Preferred process, I've got, I'm 2 minutes over. Can I jam through these last ones, okay? Okay. I don't know why that's there again. Oh, what I'm gonna have you do around your tables in a minute is to think, I'll tell you in a minute what I'm gonna have you do in a minute. This is my preferred process in a nutshell, because people are like, okay, Jamie, how do I start? Like I literally have so many projects I'd like to tackle. How do I start? And of course, I go through a much lengthier process, like when I'm working individually with clients and things like that. But my preferred process looks something very simple like this. Unload everything. Also, tips and tricks later, do not start in the biggest, messiest space you have. Always start small, just like with your children or those you're teaching any skill. You always start small till you develop the skills, but don't despise small beginnings, because a little bit of movement in one area, a really well-perfected like pantry situation or your spice drawer is a great place to start. It's immediately so satisfying. It takes no smarts. Now, if you find yourself stumbling through your smarts or through your spice drawer and go, that woman is so offensive. She said it didn't take any smarts to do this. What I mean is that in general, you can get matching spice jars and funnels and pour things into them and put a label on them, and you don't have to have a super creative brain that thinks about space in a unique way. And if you still don't know what to do, starting with your starting with your spices, maybe grab a friend. That will be another thing in a minute. Do things together. It's always better. Unload everything, purge and categorize, plan the space. So once I've unloaded everything, I've separated it into the piles that are really clear and then purge those as harshly as I possibly can. If you are in the later years of your life, can I encourage you, please in this? I'm nervous to say one thing, but the Swedish have this thing, I'm gonna say it anyway and trust your grace. The Swedish have something they call death cleaning. And it sounds a little morbid, I don't know if you've heard of it. It sounds a little bit morbid, but it's really this idea that as we enter that second half of our life, we're taking this assessment of the life that's behind us, and we have a lot of stuff to show for it. And what are we leaving for the next generation? Though what you don't deal with in your time when God has given you health and vigor and ability, someone else will have to deal with it. So one way you can really love your family well, and if you've been stuck with maybe a large mess left behind by someone else who didn't know or didn't have the ability to deal with it in their time on earth, you know how hard it is not to resent what they left you to do. Like, you want to have good memories of your parents, and you want to be blessing them as you sort through their cross stitches and their old photographs, and you want to feel a sense of beauty and like thankfulness for their life. But when you are going through their hordes of piles of stuff, it can be hard not to actually go the opposite and be frustrated. So bless the people coming behind you by doing the work when God's given you the ability to do it. If you need motivation, take it from me. Do it now. I've worked with so many people who feel guilty that how frustrated they are, that their parents left all this for them to deal with when they're in the middle of their own life and, trying to deal. So purge with as much sincerity as you can. Plan the space, meaning before you put everything back in, make a little plan. Gather what you need for that plan. If it's a drawer, gather the bins you need. And then this is a simple picture of categorizing in mid-project. I usually put big signs up. Just don't be afraid to treat yourself like a kindergartner. It's perfectly appropriate. Put a sign on the wall, especially if you have people helping you. Donate, store, save, etc., trash, and then categorize everything into piles or buckets if you need to, if you're doing a big project. It can take a while, but then you can have an upstairs attic that looks like that. This upstairs attic, 3 boys lived in it, and it was immovable. I mean, it was crazy. We categorized, we purged, and then we made great spaces for each of the boys. That, hashtag surprise, they actually kept up, which is amazing. This is photos. I have too many examples of different things, but photos is another category. This is my photo project. I take responsibility for that mess. That bucket there, actually, you know who gets the blame for this? Costco. Back in the day, they did double prints for like 5 cents extra. My mom, the crafty one, you know, she'd take in all of our little throwaway cameras. We'd just take thousands of like they're pictures of nothing, you know? It's 100 pictures of you and your best friend. And she, of course, thought, well, we should have doubles because they're 5 cents, you know? We had so many photos. So I, of course, had them all nicely put into albums, and I'm carrying around this just stupid amount of albums into my college dorm room, into my married life. My husband's like, do we need all those? Of course we do, you know? So I tackled this probably during COVID. It was one of my last areas I'd never tackled. It was so overwhelming to me, the pictures. And I'm like 41. I know how that is for those of you who have been collecting pictures longer than I am. Praise God if you didn't have Costco, though. Your job's a little easier. So that is the throwaway pile. That's the throwaway pile. The kept pile is now organized in little bins according to what the subject matter was. We pull these out all the time now. My kids now flip through my 8th grade trip to Madrid. Like, we actually enjoy my photos because there's so many less of them. When there's too many, you just get buried and you don't enjoy them. Okay. So those are the first 4 steps. Then you clean the surface, you stage the space, like you put the baskets up and go, do I like what that looks like? Is this gonna work for me? Then you contain everything and label. Do not forget the label, or nobody else will put the soy sauce back on the spinner that all the vinegars and sauces go on. This is my little daughter years ago. This is Hazel. She's not that little anymore. This is a gift to my grandma on, I don't know, her birthday. We did her hall closet for her, and Hazel's just so happy to help me. She helps me on lots of projects these days. All right, contained, moving forward, final slide. Some tips and tricks. Particularly this. Start small, I already said. Grab a friend, because everything's better when you're together, doing projects together. I batch cook with friends all the time. I think I probably have a couple pictures on here of that. I'll just let them scroll. But yeah, so I batch cook with friends all the time. We'll get together and we'll make one massive mess. We'll make 30 to 40 meals each that we each get to keep. We fill our freezers with freezer bags, and I don't cook some months, dinner or other things, because I've done all that cooking at one time. And this is an old picture of my freezer. It's better now, but this is an old picture of I just have soups and stews, and I'm ready to go, particularly before Christmas, before Advent, or before Lent. I always, before those 2 seasons in the church life, I always gather friends and we all cook together. We make a whole extra set of meals to bless a struggling or single mom in our community. So she gets a whole pile of free meals. We come over and clean out her freezer and fill it. Gather your friends, do things with friends. Everything's better with friends. There were other tricks. They're on your sheet in front of you. I moved past it and I don't think it goes back, and now I don't remember what they were. You can get back there if you want to. But I will leave you with this. There's a couple in the purge and categorize step that I told you earlier. There's a few questions. You can write them down if you want. I don't think they're written anywhere. These are some questions you might ask if you're in that first stage of purging. Do I need it? Okay? Do I need it? Whether or not it's something you love, you might actually need it. Like, there are things I wish I did not have to own that I own. Do I need it? Sure. Needful items stay. Do I ever use it? You all have those things that you truly never use. And if you never use it, along with items that are used so infrequently, you could probably figure out another way to get that job done if you didn't have it. If you don't use it frequently, be honest about that. That's a way to purge. Can I actually picture myself using it? So a good intention is wonderful, but if you can't actually picture yourself wearing that outfit or using that thing, if it doesn't come quickly to your mind, just consider that. You don't want to go around being the kind of person who wishes she made homemade ice cream. Do you actually make homemade ice cream? It's fine if you don't. They're not better people. They're not more spiritual. It's great if you make homemade ice cream. Like, it's awesome. I love it. You deserve an ice cream maker then. You over here do not deserve an ice cream maker. You don't make it, and it's fine. Don't keep it because you wish you were the kind of person that used it. Own things for the kind of person that God's actually made you to be, and then use up everything you own and serve with your whole life. Do I love it? Okay, so do I need it? Do I use it? can I actually picture myself using it, or am I living in some imaginary version of myself that is not real? It's false. And then, do I love it, or is it truly beautiful? You know, you all know the Marie Kondo thing. Like, if it makes you smile, if it brings you joy, like the joy touching. She wrote that book, and I was like, that's a book I was gonna write, but not with all the weird mumbo jumbo about my socks having feelings. If you've read that book, I read it and I was like, it's my book. I have the whole outline in the back of my notebook, but I'm really busy homeschooling my kids, and I was gonna write that book in a couple years. I literally have all these chapters of books I've never written, you know, because I'm busy living my real life. And I thought I was gonna write that book, except not talk about the socks, like they're getting hurt by me not rolling them right. I don't know, it's weird to me. As sweet and beautiful as it is, it's weird to me. But there is this real sense about, does it bring me joy? And if it does, and it's beautiful and brings you joy, keep it without guilt. If it's not, let go of it without guilt. And the final one is this: is it sentimental? There are different kinds of sentimental, and the last thing I'll say about sentimentality is that guilt and sentimentality are not the same thing. Okay? If someone gave you a gift, or your grandma made a thing, and you feel guilty getting rid of that, that is not the same thing as keeping it because it brings you a great remembrance of the woman who made it. You can take a photo of it or keep one small corner of a blanket or something to still honor the work that was done there without guilt. And when I'm in people's homes all the time who refuse to get rid of things, well, my mom's gonna come over and she always asks me about, where's the thing I got you, you know? And I go, oh, dear friend, that is your mom's emotional unhealth, and it's just not your problem. And you can love your mom well and live your own life well without feeling guilty when you haven't sinned. Save your guilt for your sins, your actual sins. You have enough of those, and you should feel conviction about them. You should not feel guilty if someone gave you a gift and you don't want or need it. They gave it to you. They gave it to you out of love. You go, they were so nice. They loved me so much. They gave this to me, and I'm getting rid of it with no guilt. I walk in that kind of freedom, and it took me a minute. We had to sit my grandma and my parents down when our kids were young and have a conversation about all the presents that were coming into the house, all the things. I said, I really want you to give experiences to our kids. Can you please join us in this? We just don't have room for all this stuff. There are 7 of us, and right now we live in 900 square feet. I just can't. I go, if you buy it and you want to leave it at your house, that's amazing. We'll play with it when we come over. And it felt awful. Not like telling my sweet grandma to stop giving my kids stuff. It felt yucky. At the same time, I want to love my grandma well and not resent her every time her stuff is all over my house, right? I want a healthy relationship with her. So having meaningful conversations can get you down the path of working out of proper sentimentality and not guilt, okay? So those tips and tricks for the last time. Start small, grab a friend, remember the vision. Where vision lacks, the people perish. That's the proverb. Where there's a lack of vision, the people perish. Remember your vision. If you don't know why you're doing it, you're just gonna get annoyed that you made a much bigger mess that you now have to clean up. It always gets worse before it gets better, and you will find that to be true. Set a timer and move really fast. Give yourself 15 minutes. You will be shocked at what you can accomplish in 15 minutes of focused work. Finish no matter what. Okay? If you get almost there in a room and you leave a pile in the corner, that pile will accumulate over the next 7 to 10 business days. And you will be so annoyed because your whole weekend of organizing felt like it was useless because the pile just regrew. But if you finish, you will have the joy of walking into that space with the satisfaction that I did the job, I did it all the way, and now I get to do the work of just maintaining it. So give yourself time and space to finish, and then remember the 7 principles. Friends, thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Thanks. I would love to pray for you, if that's okay. I'd love to pray over you before we do the next step. And then you're gonna have about 20 minutes around your table to discuss a question. And the question that I just want you to use as your point of discussion, I think Sandra might give a little more detail about this, but the question that I would say is, look at those 7 principles. You should have like a little printout in front of you. Look at those 7 principles. Is there one of those that jumped out at you? Like one, just pick one. Maybe all 7 did. Maybe you're killing it at 3 of them. You're like, I've nailed these. Like I believe these and I live by these. But man, this one got me. Pick one that kind of spoke to you a little bit. And maybe as a point of introduction to others at your table, use that one principle and just note how you feel like your life would change if you implemented that one principle, or how it hit you or why it hit you. Tell a story related to it, whatever it is. Use the 7 principles, pick one as you introduce yourself that hit you in a certain way, and then share around your table. Let me pray for you guys, and then we'll continue. Father, I thank you today for who you are, for your goodness, for your creational order, just for the way that you made us to image you. It's a real gift. It's a real gift to be called your children. So we thank you for your love that has been extended to us, your grace that covers us and lets us live freely within your love. And I pray freedom for the women that are gathered around these tables. I pray that as they go and move from this place, that they would have a vision within themselves that you put there, even by the power of your Spirit, that you would help them to engage in their own transformation internally and work it out in their hands. I pray that good head knowledge, what we believe about you to be true, what you've revealed about yourself to be true to us, would translate into the affections of our hearts, that our hearts would be oriented together as women of God and then individually in our own homes, in our churches, in our communities, that we would be oriented around the praise and glory of our Father, and that orientation would absolutely shake everything else, and it would come out in the works of our hands, that we would become skillful at imitating you in creating order and beauty for the sake of serving and blessing the world, starting with those closest to us. So help these women to develop love and tenderness and care for themselves and those in their own households as they do this work, that they would do it unto you, for the love of others, empowered by your Spirit, without guilt or shame, but really walk in joy, the joy of that freedom. So I ask you for those big things, because we know that this is a lot of hard work, and we acknowledge it before you. Help us, equip us to do that work for your praise, for your glory, and for our joy. So we ask in the name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen.